Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very exciting.
Do you believe that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of this planet?
I think a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they live their forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground. That's burning down because of a lack of management.
But, sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars?
Not really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by $3,500.
They simply
but you would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me, many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And I'm okay with electric cars, too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the...
I'm all for that renewable energy shit.
...into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy
that, but what's powering those charging stations?
Us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that in fact is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States.
Yeah, but you're not accounting for the algae contents and what they absorb. Not to mention, we're uncovering things in the rainforest.
Here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that, well, the fact that it's all true. And here's the deal.
He's talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down buildings and rebuild the building.
No,
it's the dumbest, most ridiculous. Where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out, where they want to take out the cows too. That's not true either, right? This is a 100 trillion. That's more money than our country could make in 100 years if we're
not
going.
the case.
All right, let me because I actually, wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good paying jobs.
But let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that.
$100 billion.
The fact is, it's going to create millions of good paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them.
I never said that.
And here's the deal.
You make up.
We are going to be in a position where we can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars now. Billions of dollars.
Yeah, these
on
two
floods,
goons debating. This isn't a debate. This is literally trash, dude.
Look what's happening just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections.
It's like me blowing out with one of my family
That
members.
didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. But the rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen.
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does. India does. They all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is not my plan.
That's
the Green
you
New
want to
Deal
rebuild every
is not
building.
my plan.
I want to rebuild every
Gentlemen,
He made a statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
That is
What
not
he
true.
did
Sir,
is he
you're done in
said
this segment.
he called
Mr.
the military
Mr. Vice President,
stupid bastards.
I
And he
did
said
not
it on
say
tape.
that.
He said
Mr.
stupid bastards.
Please,
No.
sir, stop.
I would never say that.
Play it.
Stop.
Huh?
Play it.
Go ahead. Mr.
Right.
Vice President answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all was ranting.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
But do you
We're going to
support
build
the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
You support?
No, I don't support the Green
Oh,
New
you
Deal.
don't? Oh, well, that's a
You
big
let-
statement.
I
That
support
means you
the
just
Biden.
lost the radical left.
I support
Oh, you
the
don't?
Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment.
Radical
Election
left
integrity.
Green
As
New
we
Deal,
meet
yeah.
tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election? And what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks? Because it'll not only be to Election Day, but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after Election Day. What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com. Decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheated. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots. Like
Dude,
he does.
voting is...
He sits behind the Resolute
Whatever.
desk and sends his ballot to Florida. Number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, it'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country is going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change? You're going to get 4 more years of these lies.
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listen to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won. From the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady, they were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that,
Sir,
all run by
2 minutes
Democrats.
is 2 minutes.
All
You're-
run
you're-
by
you're-
Democrats. It's
President
a,
Trump,
it's a rigged election.
you're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I don't think, well, I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. Because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what are you going to do about it if there are millions of
What's
ballots
in the
going
background?
out?
What you go and vote. You do a solicited
The,
ballot,
No, no,
and that's
I'm not-
okay.
Is that a preamble or is that a Bill of Rights?
About the
Bill of
fact
Rights.
that millions of people
You go and
have
vote.
I kind of want to reread it now because it looks really
Like
interesting.
they used to
About the fact that millions of people.
You either do, Chris, a solicited
Better than these two
ballot, when
clowns.
You're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold.
Selling
They're being dumped in
ballots?
rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country.
There is no.
This is not.
There is no.
This is not
evidence
going
of
Oh,
to
that.
end
shut up,
well.
Joe.
Okay.
No
This
evidence
is
of that.
not going
Vice
to end
President
well.
Five states have had
go ahead,
mail-in
sir.
ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's
Mhm.
sent to your home. What we're saying is, they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by the time, by election day. If it doesn't get in till the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because
You're
he knows
wrong.
the outcome.
You're
No,
wrong.
I want to continue with you on
I
this,
love
Vice
that.
President Biden. because
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes
in
a
fact,
statement
no,
like that.
excuse me, Vice President Biden. The biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting,
I think
has
they're
not
already
been
over their
fraud
time for
historically.
sure,
It has
dude.
been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed
be fraud.
the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court, with a Justice Barrett, will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you. That is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me,
Finally,
when you
I
have
a final-
80 million
gentlemen,
ballots,
I have a final
Senate and
question.
swamping
This is
the
the
system,
craziest debate I've ever
you
seen,
know
dude,
it
for
can't be
presidents.
done. You know it
This
can't,
is
and already
ridiculous.
All right,
it's
so
been
now
flawed,
they'll
decided-
The moderator has literally had to interrupt them so many times.
In 8 states,
Interrupt Trump, sorry, because Biden's been like speechless this whole time. Not speechless, but like he's just been like much quieter.
8 states from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and
Yes.
flatten them until election day. That means that
They
it's
should be
likely,
given their
because
time.
There's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
Could be months.
until we find out who
It could be
the new
months.
president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will
Yeah,
you
good
urge
luck.
your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest, and will you pledge tonight
Good
that
luck.
you will not declare victory
You already created
until
division.
the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you
I'm
go first.
urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair
You're urging
election,
them what?
I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that.
How do you know they're being manipulated, though?
Does that mean you're going
It's almost impossible to prove.
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots.
Yeah, but they could have been doing that for freaking decades at this point, dude.
Number one. Number two.
Seriously.
The electoral votes
They
that
cheat.
take it.
Hey,
That's what I mean.
non-ballot
It has
ballots
nothing
in
to
a
do with
wastepaper
people,
basket
dude.
3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name.
Trump's
Trump
gonna
on them.
get the electoral
Vice
votes,
President
dude. You
Biden,
know he is,
Vice
dude,
President
because he's
Biden,
got
final question
the
to you.
wealth on
Will
his
you
side.
urge your
Not the wealth,
supporters
but
to
the
stay
wealthy
calm
people, dude. He's
while
got
the vote
people
is
with a
counted,
lot of
and will
money
you pledge not to declare victory
that are
until
willing
the
to give him those
election is
electoral votes. That's all that
independently
matters right now,
Yes.
dude. Is the
Here's the
almighty
deal.
dollar.
They count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until election day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War, in effect.
Yep.
And that's what's going to happen. Why was it not? Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots. That somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's so easy to fraud any type of voting, dude. You kidding me?
You had an opportunity
Look
to
at
respond.
Carolyn Monroe.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what
Vice
happened.
President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome, and I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want
if
to
in
see an
fact,
honest ballot count.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it? This is the end of this debate?
Honest ballot count.
We're
And I
gonna
It's
think
leave it
over.
there.
do.
To be continued as in
Yep.
more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to
Yeah.
thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th, at the University of Utah in Salt Lake
In
City.
Utah?
Presidential nominees, Vice President Mike Pence and Senator
Hey, Mom, you
Kamala
want to go to
Harris,
that?
will debate at 9 p.m. Eastern that night. We hope you watch. Until then, thank you and good night.
It's the two clowns trying for president right now.
Concludes PBS's coverage of this first presidential debate of the 2020 election cycle. Welcome back to the
I call them
PBS
clowns
NewsHour
because, you know,
special coverage.
they're all clowns,
I'm Judy
right?
Woodruff at our studio in Washington, D.C. I have to say, I've never seen a debate like this one. It was more of a brawl at times than it
Yeah.
was a debate. The president,
Like Trump just running roughshod over him, dude. Like,
Chris Wallace, not to interrupt.
That was-
there were
yeah.
tough words exchanged. The president accused Joe Biden of being radical left, of being not smart.
Well, he's
Someone who's
not.
trying to steal the election. We heard Joe Biden
Well,
say
he's
he's the
vice
worst
president.
the country's
I mean,
ever
Trump
had.
interrupted way too
And at
much,
one
dude, in
point
my
early in
opinion.
the debate
But
said, "Shut up, man."
overall,
think it's
I
fair
mean,
to
he
say
didn't.
we broke
Biden
new
didn't have
ground
much to
on
say
the
against
presidential
Trump when he
debate.
was trying to bring up
Joining
good
me
points,
now
dude.
to look at a little of what
So,
we said tonight, the news
but
hour, Michelle Sindel,
Again, like,
Michelle
in a
Dow.
way, like, you know,
Let's turn
Trump
to
was
you,
interrupting. He
Yamiche
cut a
first.
lot of
The
time off
president
them.
was determined to have his say tonight, wasn't he?
That's right, Judy. This was an all-out dogfight, a brawl. It was fierce. It was personal. The president said that Joe Biden could not have handled the coronavirus pandemic. He said that he wasn't smart. He also went after him and accused him of being a socialist. And then he was on the
He is.
defense as Joe Biden called him a clown, a racist, a
A
liar.
clown.
saying
I
he was
just
the
called them
worst
both
president
clowns.
in the United States. President Trump also, and it's a moment to remember, he was asked several times, will you denounce white supremacists? He said, quote,
Oh my
Proud
God,
Boys,
dude.
stand back
Really?
and stand by. I also want to do a quick fact check, Judy, because that was a remarkable moment. But there was another remarkable moment, and it was when Chris Wallace posed the question multiple times to President Trump, how much taxes have you paid? We should pull up that graphic now on President Trump's taxes. He paid, according to the New York Times, $750 in federal income taxes in 2016 and $750
Most of
in
them do.
2017.
They all
He
get
did
the
not pay
tax
income
loops
taxes
because they're
10
so
out of the
rich.
15
That's
years
what America's
beginning in
about,
2000.
dude.
Due to
America's
law,
all about
President
tax
Trump
loops,
pushed
dude.
back on that report.
Are you kidding
He
me?
said he paid
How do you think
millions in
nonprofits
taxes.
work?
He said some Some years he's paid as much as $38 million. But just like in 2016,
He
said
probably
he can't
did.
release his tax returns because he is under audit. Joe Biden released his tax returns along with Kamala Harris today. So Joe Biden said it's time to release your taxes. The president wouldn't do that.
And we heard Joe Biden.
Because
and
this
the
country's
moderators
full of
say, when are we
loopholes,
going
dude.
to
You don't
see
want to
the taxes?
expose that
The
shit to
president,
everybody, because then
did
it's not going to be a loophole
answer,
anymore.
As he has not previously. Lisa, in terms of Joe Biden, he
This country's
was,
made
as
on
we said,
loopholes,
interrupted
dude.
a lot, but he gave as good as he got at points. He did. First, I almost feel like I have to take a deep breath and just say, I hope everybody out there is okay. That was quite an experience we had.
Really?
There's a lot to unpack. And when we talk about Joe Biden, one argument he made was he said that violent crime went down under his and President Obama's administration more
It did
than
not.
with President Trump. Let's look at a graphic about what we know about that. Biden quoted a statistic. He said it went down 17 to 15%. That's true. The FBI crime statistics show that the violent crime rate, so the rate per capita, did go down 16% under President Barack Obama. Now, Biden also said that murder rates have gone up, and in fact, he said everything has gone up in terms of violent crime under President Trump. That we do not yet know. In fact, the FBI statistics show that the rate of violent crime dipped in 2017 and 2018 under President Trump. We do not yet have statistics, Judy, for 2019. There is some data that shows, especially in cities, some murder rates have gone up and violent crime has gone up in the last year, but the FBI has not compiled those statistics yet. So it's really extrapolating what some people see in general, and it's not yet known. Just quickly to you and Yamiche, in terms of COVID, the president's handling of COVID, we heard a lot of criticism from Joe Biden about the number of Americans who've died. Yamiche,
He's the one
is the
that shut
president
down
saying
the
anything?
country.
What did you hear tonight, contrasted with what the president has said on COVID?
Yeah, ask a
The president
Democrat.
really was saying what he's always said on COVID, which is that he did the best that he could do. He talked about the fact that he banned travel from China. What he did, of course, was not ban complete travel from China. There were Americans that were coming in from China, Europeans that were coming in from China at one point. So the president was saying that he really is trying to make sure also that this vaccine is going to be out in the hands of Americans as soon as possible. Health officials say his timeline seems to be quicker than they can
You notice
imagine.
how much they
The other
blink
thing to
when
note
they're
is that
talking?
the president really
Yeah.
talked
They
about
blink a
the fact
lot.
that the United States is doing a good job in the coronavirus. I don't think we have
They
a
must be
graphic up
nervous.
right now, but what I will say is that the United States is doing poorly when you look at modernized, industrialized nations. When you compare
Okay.
to Germany, the European Union, other countries, you see that our deaths and our infections are higher than those other countries that we compare ourselves to. So the president was not right in trying to say that the United States is handling the coronavirus well.
And Lisa,
Why?
just
Because we're the only
quickly,
nation
Joe
with
Biden,
actual rights
was challenged by
for
the
individuals.
president to explain why he wasn't in favor of closing down.
They just
China
compared us to all these
earlier,
nations that don't
and
necessarily have the
at one
same
point
like
it got into a discussion
personal freedoms as we
about
do.
who believes the scientists
Yeah.
and what Biden had said about that. That's right, and also the words of his running mate Kamala Harris came into play. Her words that she was fearful that scientists could be muzzled. Chris Wallace questioned whether that raised more fear, that if it was contributing to the problem. Biden's answer to that was no. It was sort of pointing out from his point of view an issue with the Trump administration and how they handle science, in their view, repressing the science. All right, Lisa Desjardins, Yamiche Alcindor. Turning now to some analysis of the debate. We're joined by our panel, Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report, host of Public Radio's
Oh, dear
Politics
God.
with Amy Walter.
Yeah.
Gary Abernathy,
This is
contributing
PBS,
columnist for the
so, I
Washington
mean,
Post.
you gotta
He
expect
joins us
it's gonna
from
be like-
Cincinnati.
I was
And
surprised at what they said in the last one, dude. Like those two last people, they weren't necessarily. It didn't seem like they were like on any side or anything. It was pretty amazing. For PBS, normally PBS is a pretty leftist type thing, but
Yeah, I'm still trying to recover from what we saw here, Judy, and I don't know that anybody
recover? Really?
particularly good
You need to
about
recover
what
from a
has happened
fucking
for the
TV?
last 90 minutes,
Yeah.
or if anybody will really remember
God,
anything
dude.
about the last 90 minutes other than it
Why?
was like a food fight. In fact, I'm quite curious if we had dial tests.
Yeah, we don't have it on video.
People
We can
after
just
the
watch
first
it.
15 minutes actually turn this thing off. But look, as I said at the
Why
very
would you turn it
beginning, the
off,
goal
dude?
If you're Donald Trump, is to change the narrative in this race, to put Joe Biden on the defensive, to make the focus a choice between Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
'Cause it is a
instead of
fucking
referendum
choice.
on Donald Trump. And I don't think he was particularly effective in doing that tonight. Now, what he was able to do by the constant interrupting was to kind of get Joe Biden out of a groove. Joe Biden never was able to get into a comfortable, smooth place to make his case. But he didn't rattle him, I think, in the way that
he's not educated enough.
Trump and
No,
Trump advisors
Trump interrupted
had
him a
hoped, where
lot.
he would either say something completely terrible or meltdown or
I gotta take the
lose
last
his-
5 minutes of this off. I
lose
cussed.
his train of thought. But
You're losing your
this
train
goes
of thought,
back to
lady.
the challenge